the school that accidentally created a criminal empire. They called it Hawthorne Academy, and from the outside it looked like virtue made of stone. Iron gates, Latin mottos, ivy crawling up walls that cost more than most houses. Parents sent their children there to become leaders. What Hawthorne actually taught them was how to win, quietly, cleverly, and without being caught. No one intended to create criminals. That was the lie everyone agreed to believe. The first rule at Hawthorne was unspoken. Results mattered more than methods. Grades were worshipped, rankings were public, every hallway had leaderboards, debate wins, math Olympiads, admissions acceptances. Students learned early that being second was a kind of failure, and being moral was optional if it slowed you down. Teachers noticed small things at first: identical essays with different fonts, stock market simulations where certain students always won, charity fundraisers that raised implausible sums, then couldn't quite explain the accounting. The administration smiled and called it initiative. By 14, the students understood systems better than adults. They learned how to exploit exam software, how to predict teachers' grading biases, how to game scholarship committees with just the right balance of tragedy and triumph. A rumor spread that one boy had written a script to scrape past exam questions from forgotten cloud backups. No one asked how he knew that. They learned politics and student council, not as service but as leverage. Coalitions were built, favors traded, reputations destroyed with surgical precision. One election ended when a candidate withdrew after screenshots appeared from a private chat. The screenshots were real, the leak was anonymous, the lesson was permanent. Power wasn't loud, power was invisible. Hawthorne prized networking above all else. Alumni dinners were rituals. Bankers, ministers, tech founders, men and women who spoke openly about influence while pretending not to. Students were encouraged to reach out, to build relationships, to position themselves early. So they did. One group ran a ghost-written essay business for wealthy applicants abroad. Another quietly managed social media campaigns for local politicians. Nothing illegal, just aggressive narrative shaping. A third built bots to inflate engagement metrics for startups seeking funding. All of it was framed as learning opportunities. When a teacher asked if this crossed ethical lines, a student replied calmly, "Ethics is a constraint problem. We're optimizing." He received top marks. The culture rewarded those who never flinched. When a student's identity was used to open offshore accounts as part of a simulation, the administration intervened, not to punish but to protect the school's reputation. The incident vanished. The perpetrators learned something far more valuable than discipline. Consequences were negotiable. By graduation, many students already had shell companies, encrypted contacts, and a comfort with ambiguity that bordered on professional. They spoke in euphemisms, they joked about loopholes, they trusted systems only to the extent that those systems could be bent. Parents applauded the results: acceptance letters, internships, early success. No one asked what kind of people were being trained. The empire didn't form all at once. It emerged years later, quietly, as Hawthorne alumni recognized one another in the wild. A familiar way of speaking, a shared disdain for rules that existed only for inefficient actors. Old group chats reactivated. A fraud ring here, laundering money through legitimate startups. A political consultancy there, specializing in disinformation with plausible deniability. A cybercrime syndicate that never called itself that, just infrastructure. They didn't see themselves as criminals, they were problem solvers. When journalists eventually noticed the pattern, Hawthorne denied everything. "These individuals do not represent our values," the headmaster said, standing beneath the same Latin motto, virtus per centium, virtue through knowledge. But knowledge without restraint had been the curriculum all along. The school had taught them how to move money, influence opinion, erase tracks, and justify outcomes. It had taught them that rules were for people who couldn't rewrite them, and that success absolved everything. Hawthorne didn't create evil, it created competence without conscience, and then acted surprised when that competence scaled. Today, the gates still gleam, the brochures still promise leadership, and somewhere, a new student is learning the most important lesson Hawthorne ever taught. If you're smart enough, the world is just a system, and systems exist to be exploited. The empire was never an accident. It was the final exam.